Book of Yashar, chapter 7, beginning at verse 23 through 51. And Cush, the son of Ham, the son of Noah, took a wife in those days in his old age, and she bare him a son, and they called his name Nimrod, saying, At that time the sons of men again began to rebel and transgress against the Most High. And the child grew up, and his father loved him exceedingly, for he was the son of his old age. And the garments of skin which Father Yahweh made for Adam and his wife when they went out of the garden were given to Cush. For after the death of Adam and his wife, the garments were given to Enoch, the son of Jared. And when Enoch was taken up by the Most High, he gave them to Methuselah, his son. And at the death of Methuselah, Noah took them and brought them to the ark, and they were with him until he went out of the ark. And in their going on, Ham stole the garments from Noah his father, and he took them and hid them from his brothers. And when Ham begot his firstborn son Cush, he gave him the garments in secret, and they were with Cush many days. And Cush also concealed them from his sons and brothers. And when Cush had begotten Nimrod, he gave him those garments through his love for him. And Nimrod grew up, and when he was 20 years old, he put on those garments. And Nimrod became strong when he put on the garments. And Father Yahweh gave him might and strength, and he was a mighty hunter in the earth. Yea, he was a mighty hunter in the field, and he hunted the animals, and he built altars. He offered upon them the animals before the Most High. And Nimrod strengthened himself, and he rose up from amongst his brethren, and he fought the battles of his brethren against all of their enemies round about. And the Father delivered all the enemies of his brethren into his hands. And Father Yahweh prospered him from time to time in his battles, and he reigned upon the earth. Therefore it became current in those days, when a man ushered forth those that he had trained up for battle, he would say to them, like Father Yahweh did to Nimrod, who was a mighty hunter in the earth, and who succeeded in battles that prevailed against his brethren, that he delivered them from the hands of their enemies. So may Father Yahweh strengthen us and deliver us this day. And when Nimrod was 40 years old, at that time there was a war between his brethren and the children of Japheth, so that they were in the power of their enemies. And Nimrod went forth at that time, and he assembled all the sons of Cush and their families, about 460 men. And he hired also from some of his friends and acquaintances about 80 men. And he gave them their hire, and he went with them to battle. And when he was on the road, Nimrod strengthened the hearts of the people that went with him. And he said to them, Do not fear, neither be alarmed, for all our enemies will be delivered into our hands, and you may do with them as you please. And all the men that were about 500, and they fought against their enemies, and they destroyed them and subdued them. And Nimrod placed standing officers over them in their respective places. And he took some of their children as security. And they were all servants of Nimrod and his brethren. And Nimrod and all the people that were with him turned homeward. And when Nimrod had joyfully returned from battle, after having conquered his enemies, all his brethren, together with those who knew him before, assembled to make him king over them. And they placed a regal crown upon his head. And he set up his subjects and peoples, princes, judges, and rulers, as is the custom amongst the kings. And he placed Terah, the son of Nahor, the prince of his host. And he dignified him and elevated him above all his princes. And whilst he was reigning according to his heart's desire, after having conquered all his enemies around, he advised with his counselors to build a city for his palace. And they did so. And they found a large valley opposite to the east, And they built him a large, extensive city. And Nimrod called the name of that city he built Shinar. For Father Yahweh had vehemently shaken his enemies and destroyed them. And Nimrod dwelt in Shinar, and he reigned securely, as he fought with his enemies and subdued them. And he prospered in all of his battles, and his kingdom was very great. And all nations and tongues heard of his fame, and they gathered themselves to him, and they bowed down to the earth, and they brought him offerings, and he became their Lord and King. And they all dwelt with him in the city of Shinar. And Nimrod reigned in the earth over all the sons of Noah, and they were all under his power and counsel. And all the earth was of one tongue, and words of union. But Nimrod did not go in the way of the Most High. He was more wicked than all the men that were before him from the days of the flood until those days. And he made gods of wood and stone, and he bowed down to them. And he rebelled against Father Yahweh, and taught all his subjects, and all the people of the earth his wicked ways. And Mardon his son was more wicked than his father. And everyone that heard the acts of Mardon the son of Nimrod would say concerning him, from the wicked goeth forth wickedness. Therefore it became a proverb in the whole earth, saying, from the wicked goeth forth wickedness. And it was current in the words of men from that time to this. And Terah the son of Nahor, prince of Nimrod's host, was in those days very great in the sight of the kings and his subjects. And the king and princes loved him, and they elevated him very high. And Terah took a wife, and her name was Amthello, the daughter of Cornebo. And the wife of Terah conceived and bare a son in those days. Terah was 70 years old when he begat him, and Terah called the name of his son that was born to him Abram, because the king had raised him in those days and dignified him above all his princes that were with him. Peace be unto you, brothers and sisters. Peace be unto you. This is Elder Youngman, and the name of tonight's message is Polytheism 101. It's Polytheism 101. The reading that I just did was from the book of Yasher, which is an apocryphal book removed from the Bible, and it's basically a retelling of all of the Old Testament, but it does it with more detail. It's more descriptive. You know, it's going to paint a more vivid picture. It's kind of like the difference between the three synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, between them and the Gospel of John. So, you know, it's just a lot more descriptive. It gives a lot more of the, how can I put it? Some more of the fine details. You know, it goes into more of a, I don't want to say human story, but it's more descriptive. You get a better picture of what's going on from the book of Yasher. But this description of Nimrod, it goes into how Nimrod became the mighty hunter of men. How basically Nimrod was able to set up the first empire on the planet, the Babylonian Empire. And a lot of the preaching that folks get in the churches, and a lot of the what is pulled from the canon really does not detail Nimrod's significance. Okay, we have to look at backdrop here. This is right after the flood. This is within 3 generations of the flood that Nimrod basically steps out. He rises, and he rises with the help of the Most High. It's characterized in this particular book, the garments of Adam that were blessed by the Father. His daddy Adam. So he put him on, and then he became strong. But basically, we kind of had to look at the backdrop to this. The flood happened because of what we saw that happened in Genesis 6, and then also what we saw that happened in the book of Enoch. The planet was basically ruled by the gods, and I say that as in gods, plural, more than one. And the gods, whether you're talking about the Greek gods or you're talking about all of the pre-flood deities, are all traceable back to fallen angels. So it doesn't matter if you call them Zeus, it doesn't matter if you call them Hades, whatever you want to call them, the deities of that time before the flood, pre-flood, antediluvian gods, we're talking about fallen angels across the board. Basically, this is what was going on across the water outside of the Hebrew world. And I love looking at the parallels between the two. If you look at the ages that were laid out in Greek mythology, the very first age, they talk about Zeus and men that were original from the earth. They were made of earth. And they just kind of faded out, disappeared. See, this was the line of Adam. And, they separated themselves, and then they created their own world, right? That's basically what Atlantis is, or was, I should say. This was the angelic capital. And this because men, taking the Father's breath, went and mingled themselves with angels. That's why the Father wiped out civilization with the flood, okay? And, you've got Japheth's people that were taken over by the offspring of the angels, the humans, or God men. Hu in Arabic means God. So now we get to Nimrod, and basically the world has been renewed. It's a whole new world, and then you got 2 generations of peace. And then you get down to verse 23. And Cush, the son of Ham, the son of Noah, took a wife in those days in his old age. She bare a son, and they called his name Nimrod, saying, at this time the sons of men again began to rebel and transgress against the Most High. And the child grew up, and his father loved him exceedingly, for he was the child of his old age. So basically, you've got the children of men that are talking about directing worship someplace other than the Most High, not even 4 generations after the flood. And Nimrod was the leader of this movement. So when you're talking about Nimrod, what Nimrod did, the empire on the planet always consists of 3 things. You've heard me say this before. There's always a military aspect of it. Okay? There's always force, the ability to subdue. The second piece of it is always finances. You got to have money to feed soldiers and hire people to fight wars. That's critical to it. Those 2 pieces are always very closely related. But you cannot have an empire on the planet unless you in some way direct worship. Okay? So Nimrod sinned. Why Nimrod was a standout among the children that were present on the earth of Noah's line is that this man stood up and he directed worship away from the Most High. And he did that by proclaiming himself deity. And what he would do is he would create other gods. He would create idols. This is where idolatry originated. This is post-flood idolatry. So basically what you have going on here is Satan manipulating a man so that he can divert the worship away from the Father. So Nimrod basically became the first post-flood Antichrist. He was the first prince of Tyre. And you got to understand, the king of Tyre, you know, when you think of the prince and the king of Tyre from the Bible, it's always the king of Tyre that manipulates the prince. And if you need some Bible on that, look at Ezekiel 28, starting at verse 12. Son of man, take up a lamentation over the king of Tyre, and say to him, thus says Yahweh Most High, you were the seal of wisdom and the crown of beauty. You have been in Eden, the garden of the Most High. You were decked with every precious stone, the sardium, the topaz, the emerald, the beryl, the onyx, and the jasper, the sapphire, and the pearls. You have filled your treasuries with gold, and your chests with precious stones. You had all of these things from the day you were created. You were the anointed cherub that shelters. And I have set you on the holy mountain of the Most High, and you were safe in the midst of the stones of the fire. You were perfect in your ways from the day that you were created, till iniquity was found in you. But by the multitude of your merchandise, you have filled your land with iniquity, and you have sinned. Therefore I will cast you from the mountain of the Most High. I will destroy you, O sheltering cherub, from the midst of the stone of the fire. So the king of Tyrus is addressed in Ezekiel 28, and the king of Tyrus was in Eden. So that was Satan. So Tyrus became one of the three major cities in the first Babylonian Empire. There was Babel, which was the capital, and that's where the tower was built, the first skyscraper in human history. There was Nineveh. This is where Jonah didn't want to go. These Negroes in Nineveh. I'm not going down there, Father. I don't want to go. He ran. But anyway, that's besides the point. And then there was Tyrus. So you got the three functions. You got the military in the capital. You've got the religion in Nineveh, because that was his wife's city, Queen Semiramis. She ran the religion. And then you've got Tyrus, which is basically the seat of Satan. I mean, we've covered this before. But those are the three parts of the imperial construct. Now you fast forward down to verse 47 from Jasher, and it says, and he made gods of wood and stone. He bowed down to them, and he rebelled against the Most High, and taught all his subjects and the people of the earth his wicked ways. And Mardon, his son, was more wicked than his father. Now, okay, you have to understand what happened in Enoch. And I just got clarification on this myself. But when the Father cast the angels down, okay, he locked them in the ground in chains. They were dispersed. The people believed that they were in rocks, that they were in trees, and they would bring these things into their houses, thinking that this God, this deity, was going to come out or bless them somehow. This is where you get tree worship from. This is where you get idol and rock worship from, because they believe these spirits have taken up refuge in these things. That's why the Father was so hard on his people about idols, things hewn by hand, things that were made by the hands of men out of these things that he created. Okay, so they worship the creation more so than they worship the Father that created the creation. It's crazy. It's ridiculous. But see, this was a manipulation by Satan and the fallen angels. So what Satan did is he manipulated Nimrod, and they began to create these idols, and the demon spirits would take up residence in the idols. See, behind all of these polytheistic gods that were created was a spiritual force Now the angels that defiled themselves with women, they got locked away. But see, what Satan did is through this religion, see, through polytheism, he was able to assign all of the fallen angels that fell with him. This is what he promised them. He promised them worship. He promised them heaven on earth, right? And how they receive worship is when men, silly us, go and we worship idols. There are demon spirits in the idols. So that's how polytheism began. It began with Nimrod. And Nimrod, being the mighty hunter of men, and a great war captain, war chief, whatever you want to call him, he was able to manipulate the worship of men and then divert it to himself. And instead of just diverting it to himself, he diverted it to these idols, and all of these idols had fallen angels backing them spiritually. So this is the origin of polytheism. And basically you've got polytheism all over the planet. The top deity, or the standard that Nimrod set up for himself, because he used a lot of fire, he used a lot of witchcraft, he was using the knowledge that existed in what we would call Atlantis, right? So using all of that witchcraft and magic and all that fire and all that, he set himself up as the sun god. So if that sounds familiar, it should, because in every pagan society, there was an iteration of what you would call the sun god. In Egypt, it was Ra, the sun god. You've got Saturn in Rome. You've got all kinds of, you've got all kinds of different different derivations of this deity. And this deity always refers itself back to Nimrod, regardless of what you call it. So if you want to bring this down to the biblical level, because something I guess I need to give you, this is too broad for a lot of people, especially, when you're not reading and you just sit in a church and have somebody preach to you. I'll make this very plain for you. When you talk about Elias' time in his ministry in Israel against Jezebel, okay, and the paganism that had come into Israel, and you got millions of people that were in Israel, children of Israel, right? 7,000 men were not affected by the pagan worship that Jezebel brought in. Okay, just 7,000, that's all. So the Balaam, Beelzebub, Baal, that the children of Israel worshiped during this time in the history of the Hebrew people was a derivation of Nimrod's sun god. That's who Baal is. Baal is Nimrod. So that's why the father hates him. That's why the father chases his children not to worship Nimrod, not to take on the ways of the heathen. So that's polytheism 101. That's the first. We're at 10,000, feet above the ground. But that's just the first little taste of what we're going to do on polytheism. So I hope you got something from the message. That's the message, folks. And we're going to continue on with this within the next couple of days here. So thank you all for listening. We're going to close out with a version of the Father's Prayer in Hebrew. That's what's playing in the background. Just a little taste of what the songs of the temple sounded like before the Romans kicked us out of our land back in 70 AD. It's beautiful. First time I heard cry. So you all be blessed. The Elder out.
Shabbat Shemayim Kwadashaya Shemkaya Hawa Malak Waf Nawa Taba'a Ratazayim Nawa Haya Asha Barataza Kowar Haya Bashemayim Lathan Nawa Lacham Kaya Wom Wasalak Nawa Kawa Waf Nawa Kasalak nawa, kawawakya nawa, wala atabayin nawa, banasaya wamabog, hawashayin nawa, mayan, bray kayalan nawa, kamalakwaf waha Allah, waf bayaraf waha walamyam, Shabbat Shemayim Kwadashaya Shemkaya Hawa Malak Waf Nawa Taba'a Ratazayim Nawa Haya Asha Barataza Kowar Haya Bashemayim Lathan Nawa Lacham Kaya Wom Wasalak Nawa Kawawaf Nawa Kasalak nawa, kawawakya nawa, wala atabayin nawa, banasaya wamabog, hawashayin nawa, mayan, bray kayalan nawa, kamalakwaf waha Allah, waf bayaraf waha walamyam,
Hayahawa Hafapalau, the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Shabbat Shemayim Kwadashaya Shemkaya Hawa Malak Waf Nawa Taba'a Ratazayim Nawa Haya Asha Barataza Kowar Haya Bashemayim Lathan Nawa Lacham Kaya Wom Wasalak Nawa Kawawaf Nawa Kasalak nawa, kawawakya nawa, wala atabayin nawa, banasaya wamabog, hawashayin nawa, mayan, bray kayalan nawa, kamalakwaf waha Allah, waf bayaraf waha walamyam, just be prepared. I'm singing a song. I'm an hour Shabbat Shemayim.